Welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I'm here with Susan. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Guthrie.
And we have a special guest today, Alfonso de la Nuez, co-founder and CEO of UserZoom. Hello.
Hey there. How are you?
Doing well. So Susan, this is
it was my idea.
Yeah, this is yours. So I'll let you you jump in.
All right. So I remember, Alfonso, I don't know if you remember, and maybe we don't remember the same thing, but I remember when I first met you. Do you remember that?
I think I do.
All right. So we'll share stories. So what is your memory of the first time that we met?
I think it was either UPA, because it was not UXPA, but I think it was a UPA, or it might have been a Chi conference.
Ah, that's my memory.
Chi?
Okay.
Now, I've heard of a lot of these. I don't think I've heard of Chi. I'm sure it's
Computer Human Interaction Conference.
Yeah.
Wait.
Basically.
But
yeah, so Guthrie, if you
computer with a K?
No.
No.
No, it's CHI.
So why isn't it Chai?
It's not.
Or
I don't know.
Like Chicago.
See, the fact that Guthrie, you don't know this conference means that it's been a couple of years since I've been to one. We're gonna one of the podcasts I mentioned to Guthrie that I wanted to do was a review of conferences that we've attended or spoken at, to just kind of, because there's so many great conferences to talk about that. And I probably would have forgotten to put Chi on my list, but Guthrie, it's a subgroup of the ACM. It's still a subgroup of the ACM, isn't it?
Don't know what that means.
Association of Computing Machinery.
Why would I know that?
Which is a professional computing group that's been around for decades.
But so they're still around.
Yeah, and then they years ago, like in the, I don't know, probably the 1980s or the 1990s, they formed a subgroup called Computer Human Interaction, and then they started having conferences, and they still are. Are they, Alfonso?
I think so, but see, this is kind of like an interesting way to start the conversation, because one of the topics that we were hopefully going to discuss today was kind of like what's happened to this industry in the past few years.
Oh man!
Yeah,
and I think it's so interesting that I mean, first of all, I think that my memory tells me, I think that was 10 years ago, Susan, at a Chi conference where you guys were there with the Human Factors team and Eric Schaefer and company.
Yeah, that's when I worked for Human Factors. Yep.
Yeah, and the thing is today, so if you're going to do a podcast, I think there's just a ton of conferences, new conferences that have been created in the past few years, whereas back then, and we're only talking again 10 years ago, but it seems like 30. There was literally 2 or 3, right? Like Chi, UPA, and a few others, and it was hundreds of us. Right now, you go to the UXPA conference in Boston, which is a local chapter over there, and you've got like 1,000 people just in that little chapter, or more, maybe 2,000.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's changed a lot, and I don't know. I actually, to be honest with you, I'm not sure 100% if the Chi conference is still around, but it was a very academic-driven, where you would a kind of conference where you would have. You would present papers and you would do these amazing, weird little studies and research papers. But some professionals, like I guess Human Factors and ourselves, attended those conferences and mingled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like all of her connections, a lot of her connections are from those big conferences, because you knew that the same people would show up year after year.
Yes.
Yeah, it really was. It was a way to. It almost sometimes felt like a family reunion. You go once a year and connect with all the people that you may not see except at the conference.
And that's definitely lost. I've been to kind of a lot of conferences now, and I feel like every time you go to a conference, it's totally new faces.
It's a new group of people.
Yep, every time.
It's what's going on in the industry, guys. I feel the exact same way, and I'm sure everyone in the industry feels the same way. I also felt very, very strong about the UPA and then the UXPA,
Yeah.
where you would meet customers.
Yeah.
In fact, for us, being a company, right, and trying to use the conferences for business and for business development, et cetera, and learning and socializing, we ended up in the past few years saying that it's actually much more what budget would this come from, for instance? Is it marketing, or is it actually customer success or account management? Because we would meet more customers as we grew as a company. We would actually meet more customers in conferences than meet new customers, and therefore it was more about solidifying the relationship with those customers, rather than hunting for new ones.
Yeah. So we should probably talk for a minute before we get going too much on other topics of interest, but we should probably just talk for a minute about UserZoom, your company. So how did you have this company, it's called UserZoom. You do an amazing amount of you have like this whole suite of tools that do all kinds of user research stuff. But before you tell me about that, tell me what were you doing before you started UserZoom, and when did you start the company?
Yeah, I'm happy to tell you the story because I think it's pretty interesting for the audience. There's a professional side of things and there's a personal side of things. The whole idea was that back in Spain, where I'm from, we had more of a consulting model before UserZoom. We had a company called Experience Consulting that was founded in 2001. And the idea was to be a usability company that would run user testing and everything, as many research studies as possible, but always in a lab, which is where most of the studies were being done back then. So you can, if you think about it, I mean, I know you have been in this industry for a long time, but I remember people saying usability, what? I mean, like, what are you talking about? What is it that you do? So back in 2001 and in Spain, which is not a very mature market in terms of e-commerce and digital marketing, et cetera, this was a very risky move. And my brother, my older brother, who always kind of told me what to do, was like, you're crazy, you're going to fail. What are you doing? Just go back to the corporation. Anyway, we started that, and long story short, after a few years of actually fairly successful business growth and stuff, it was just very hard to scale. It was extremely costly. We knew that we just couldn't get past the 20 to 30 employees maximum, and it was very hard. It became much, much harder every year. And then most of all, there was this thing about quantifying usability. So this thing about usability was always done with 5 to 10 users. It was very qualitative, and we always knew. And by the way, I'm a marketing major myself. I just thought, how are we going to get management to make decisions based on such a small group of users? And we, as founders, myself and my co-founding partners, we always struggled with that concept because we thought that we were adding a whole lot of value for sure, but we were never going to get past a certain limit. And that got us thinking about how we would be able to perhaps quantify user experience or usability, number one. And number two, how do we scale user research? How do we automate it? How do we make it a little easier for people to do, using the internet and using software? So through the years of this, again, pretty successful, all right, lifestyle business called Experience Consulting, we created UserZoom, which was supposedly initially just a internal project and product for us to use and to provide service, but then eventually took off as a software as a service company. Now, from a personal perspective, before I tell you what happened next, I had actually gone to high school. My parents sent me to high school when I was 16 years old here in the US. So from Madrid, I was supposed to be in the US for 1 year.
Wow.
And then Yeah,
They
so
were trying to get rid of you, apparently.
they were very much so, very, very much so, for at least 10 months. um, and let me explain this as part of how I explained the transition from experience consulting to user Zoom. So that's kind of like a note that I'm adding in the middle of the explanation here, because my parents sent me when I was 16, but then it turned out to be a very successful, I guess, escape, I guess, from my family and from my life in Madrid, because I liked it here in California, where I ended up in a very small town in San Diego. Liked it so much. Played a lot of basketball. I'm a huge basketball fan, and as you can see in the picture of my social media. And I ended up staying for my senior year, and I ended up getting a scholarship at San Jose State University, which is literally 10 minutes away from where I'm standing right now. 20 to 24 years later. So, long story short, I got my business degree, my marketing degree, went back to Spain, and then after a few years, founded Experience Consulting and founded User Zoom. And why did I bring this up? Well, because when we founded User Zoom, we actually got the interest. We raised, we attracted some American companies, even though we were in Spain, to run remote research, which is basically what we were doing with User Zoom. We wanted to automate research, and we wanted to make it remote so that you wouldn't have to be in the lab. Basically, we wanted to go beyond the lab. And we wanted to quantify and run studies with 100 or 200 participants so we could get statistical significant data. And so basically, we all looked at each other, the three co-founders, and said, hey, if we're going to push this product and this market, this business of User Zoom, it's probably best that we roll out a US, office here. And I'm like, well, and of course, the three of us talked about it. And, guess who's looking at me? Because I had spent 7 years of my life in California, so I could speak English. And, I was like, hey, why don't you just go out there? Of the three co-founders, I'm not kind of like the biz dev sales guy. So I accepted. And I came over in 2009 and kind of moved here with the family with the hope that we could, launch the User Zoom business, and took a big gamble. As you can imagine, Spain was going down big time because of the economic crisis. And then we got going, and User Zoom became, started, taking off, and this UX testing, was interesting. And so what we ended up doing is basically taking, like I said earlier, automating research and taking the lab over to the cloud, so to speak, and doing remote testing, remote user research, and that's how we got going, and that's how we got started. And then fast forward a few years to today, and it's a completely different business, of course, much bigger, and yeah, we were lucky to have lucky to some point, and we had good vision, and here we are 10 years later, having raised $34 million from a local VC and about 200 employees, and working with a whole bunch of companies in the Fortune 1000 group, and kind of living the American dream, to be honest with you. So here we are.
So how many? Okay, let's see. I'll let you can answer this in whichever metric you want to use. So I want to get an idea of the scale. So you could tell me either how many customers you have, or you could tell me how many studies get run each year with User Zoom, or how do you? So tell us, give us an idea of how big this is.
Yeah, I think that the number that I would tell you, happily, share with you and everything, is actually the second, because to me that's actually my number one favorite KPI. Yeah. Especially considering where we come from. We have about 12,000 studies. These are mostly usability studies, but it also includes surveys. Okay, but about 12,000 studies last year have gone through the User Zoom platform.
That's a few.
That's a few. Yes, especially considering that in not that long ago, again, we were looking at maybe doing about maybe 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 a year, not just with UserZoom, but in the lab, right?
Yeah.
The next stat would be not just the number study, but like on a per account level, we have a big range. But for instance, I can tell you that one of the largest technology companies here in the Bay Area, and again, I have to be very careful with all the confidential stuff, right? But I can tell you, one of the big tech giants ran 500 studies last year.
Yeah.
Just on their own, with about, if I'm not mistaken, with less than 10 hardcore users, power users. Yeah. So we're looking at companies doing something that is what I call, again, I'm talking about this concept of democratization of user research. But, it's very typical to have our companies, our clients say, Thursday is the UserZoom day, right? And so they test on a weekly basis, and they may have up to 4 studies running at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting, though, because there's been, so many changes and so much growth in the field of, usability and user experience and user research in general. And I know that people do a lot of things with your tools, but this idea of what you just said, Thursday being, testing day or whatever, this idea of running a test is still so, it's one of the in some ways, some of the easiest things that we do if the we is, experienced professionals, and it has such staying power over the years. This idea that you just, no matter all the other things you do, right, to make sure that you're designing something that meets the needs of the humans you're designing it for, there's still a point at which, or many points at which, you just gotta get, you have to have that quick and easy way to get feedback from real people, and running what I might consider a basic user test is so important.
So here's how I always frame this. I find myself telling this story over and over again. I'm talking a lot with Gartner and Forrester and analysts out there that are inquiring about this whole UX thing, because they're hearing so much. There's so much demand from the market, and I always say the same thing. The first thing that I say is that, boy, is it hard? Is it incredibly hard to design great UX?
It is, yeah.
I can tell you from not just what I hear and what I see from customers, but our own product and our own website and all that stuff. I always knew that it was very difficult because I've been designing websites since 1996. But the thing is, it's gotten a lot more complicated given that we have multiple devices, and most importantly, the demand for quick and easy. That even the end consumer doesn't realize it, but they're kind of like expecting it now. I remember the years back then when we could say, the end user will get used to it or will figure it out. We'll kind of force them. That's over. You see, that's over. That's like the president today doing something. Everybody knows about it. Everybody's going to tweet about it. Everyone is on the spot, right? So companies have to deliver great experience, because today we live in this world where you just can't afford to ship bad crap.
So I had asked this question of Susan a while ago, because when she first started, there was no standard of what a website was supposed to look like. There was just it was really a blank slate, and I was wondering if there was just like this arms race now, where even, let's just say that you are the worst designer you can really think of, but and you just start out with $1 in your pocket, but you look at what everyone else does, and you just kind of cobble together between that and a Squarespace, and you cobble together something that's rather functional and sort of, relatively useful. And I was wondering if if the importance of UX had been slightly diminished in any way because there is no there's just no room for bad design anymore, because everyone has like these kind of what if you took like a poor website today and transported it back a decade, it would be, the most well-designed, organized thing in the world.
Yeah, I hear where you're going, and I will tell you that to some extent, yes, there is certain templates and certain, let's just say, trends, design trends and elements that people understand. And by the way, these are not new, because Jacob Nielsen has been talking about heuristics for a long, long time, right? Yeah. So some of those trends are, but here's how I see it. And by the way, I actually say this myself and think about it myself. Your question is really interesting, because I'm running a business that's scaling, and there's a lot of heads, and I have to wonder, whether we are actually making an impact or not. Otherwise, why would we charge so much money? And so, to your point, the thing about it is, I think that even though you may have some design elements, some let's just say, widely adopted practices that even a bad designer or a new designer can use. The fact is, everything is going digital. Everything. Like you see this comment from Andreessen Horowitz or from Mark Andreessen. Software is eating the world. Mm-hmm. So what's happening is that if you think about the elements of user experience, it's more than just designing for usability, for instance, right? Like to get tasks done. Today, if you have everyone in the cloud and you want to produce great UX, there's a ton of elements that are very, it's beyond design schemes or templates. It's about understanding users' behavior, feelings, how things change over time. Users are now doing a lot more over mobile than they were doing over the desktop. But there's still a huge amount of traffic over the desktop. And enterprises, because by the way, enterprise UX is kind of a different chapter from any UX. Enterprises, only 25% of software in the enterprise today is in the cloud. 75% is to be clouded or to be redesigned for the cloud and for so that transformation requires a whole lot of UX expertise, UX profiles, great designers, and that's what we're seeing. And I think Jacob Nielsen, again, I reference him again because he wrote this fairly or rather interesting, I guess, article where he's talking about how in 2050 we're gonna need like I think 100 million professionals or something like that, in the UX practice. I think he's talking about, of course, designers, researchers, and interaction designers, and information architects, etc. But yeah, I mean, I guess just to wrap up the point, I don't think. I mean, there may be some application of design templates and typical ways to go about designing simple websites. But when it comes to really competing online, really competing in the online marketplace, going to the cloud and getting difficult to use, or it's not difficult to use, sorry, I would say highly interactive systems. I think UX can really it has a big job to do, basically, is what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think there really is a distinction between what we would call like a basic website and then the interactive software, the interactive apps that people are creating in order to have people get things done. And, as you said, the number of things that we're doing that you now need to do with software apps is so much larger. So if you're designing, banking app, an app to check your health insurance account for the corporate health insurance account, the all the other apps that are out there, that I mean, there are standards and de facto standards for those as well, but it's not as though you can just apply a basic template. And one of the interesting trends Guthrie and I have talked about, as we've seen in some of our consulting work, and I want to ask you a question about this too, Alfonso, because we've seen a trend. There are two different trends that I've seen recently. One is that the let's see, I'm not phrasing this very well because I'm just thinking of it as I'm talking. We've been asked to do some consulting recently in which we're evaluating the basic usability of basic online forms for a company. I mean, we're talking about, actually we're talking about.
You were laughing.
Very similar. We got out of a meeting where we were reviewing these screens, and I swear I'd reviewed screens almost exactly like this. I'm not joking, in the 1980s. Okay. All right. It was the late 1980s, but it was the 1980s. But there's still a need to do these tasks. I'm not even going to say what industry it's in. Still the need to do it. So there's, forms and new forms being designed. And it was as though no one designing those forms had ever heard of the usability. It was all the things, I turned to Guthrie and I said, oh my God, we're going through usability 101. We are talking back to the basics, like, do you left align the data, and do you left align the labels, and do you use colons, and what is there a problem with an error message that sounds like it was written by a 4-year-old computer?
Well, and then it was compounded by the fact that we were given a bunch of slides to look at, be like, okay, look at these different screens and make where can we make the usability better, but they were not in any sort of order. So it was like various like signups and logins and that kind of stuff. But like there was no user flow. So just the idea that that design is also the experience of doing something and not just one.
Right. That maybe the company should. Design. Yeah. So we had to actually, say to them, it's not just the individual screen. It's the flow and the order of the screens to get a task done. Yeah, because they had thrown at us like screens from like what looked like 10 different tasks, but we never got like, here's the flow of screens when someone is trying to do this task. So I was actually a little, I mean, it was interesting. It was very easy consulting because I had done it so many times before, but it was a little scary to me because I felt like, how could this large modern company, be kind of back to the Stone Age, really, in terms of usability? How could we get to a place where we're back here? What happened to everybody? Is this because there's all new people? And I want to get your take on that, but I also want to ask a related question, because I'm getting a lot of, we do a lot of training for clients. We do workshops and we have online video training on lots of topics, behavioral science, as well as user experience topics, and we're in the process right now of doing some marketing research with clients, about what's going on in their user experience departments. And one thing we're starting to hear over and over is, I'll give you an example. One of our clients said to us, well, I have some people on staff that are user researchers, right? They know all the ins and outs of, for instance, conducting a usability test, but I don't have very many of them. And a lot of the rest of the team needs to be able to run their own usability tests, and they really don't know, the details of how to do that. And as you and I know, Alfonso, that being able to craft a good test, although in some ways it's simple, in some ways it's not. I mean, it takes skill, and there's definitely do's and don'ts and best practices of how to decide what to test, how to decide how to phrase the test questions so that you get data that's useful to you, and that this idea that the number of designers and the number of people involved in user experience is kind of mushrooming and growing very large, but that the number of people who really have those skills to run user tests and do other kinds of in-depth user research is certainly not as large, and maybe even is shrinking. So that was a lot of me talking. I'll let you comment on all that.
I think you hit on several. So one is the last concept you talked about is training, and I have a lot of stuff to comment about training and education. So I'll get to that one. The other ones that you also mentioned that I'd like to add some of my thoughts would be this larger organization forms, and then I was also going to kind of complete my story on how hard it is to design, with actually the opposite, which is how do we make UX competitive? So, your competitive advantage. How do we make user experience your competitive advantage? So let me take one by one, these three concepts, these three topics. One is the larger, this large company you were saying, and it's probably, I'm going to guess, in the healthcare or banking area, probably not in the retail space, but I'll just guess. And
I'm not going to say.
You're not going to say. No, you're not going to say. But here's the thing, guys. The larger the company, the worse, right? I mean, because the thing about, to me, one of the main killers or enemies of great UX is politics. It's being a large organization.
You mean corporate politicking?
Yeah. Corporate politics. Sorry. Yeah.
No, for sure.
Nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats or whatever. I'm talking about corporate politics. Yes, you have to make decisions, and some people in the corporation, as we all know, they're there to sometimes mostly cover their butts, and their work may not be as innovative. So innovation gets trumped, at the corporation level because it's so big. So then the little guys are able to kind of move and make decisions faster. And so design is about making decisions about, hey, we got to change this, we got to make this better, this. And I think that's why still in the enterprise today, a lot of this UI is totally outdated, like from 30 years ago. And I think that we still have a ways to go. As I said, only 25%, according to Gainsight, because this data, this stat comes from Gainsight, a partner that we use ourselves for account management and customer success. And they claim that only 25% of the software in the enterprise has been kind of redesigned for the cloud, and everything else is just totally outdated. So the bigger the company, the bigger the difficulty to actually get great UX. By the way, another topic on the large companies that to me UX starts from the top. Like, it's not about a design team or whatever. You can have the greatest, Michael Jordan leading the design team. If you have, if you don't really have a management buy-in, and I'm talking about the CEO and the C-level organization, I think you're not going to make it when it comes to being, to delivering great customer experience. Now, the second topic was this concept of again, like how much really can UX impact today? If we have a bunch of design templates. Well, here's the thing. The way I see it, guys, is you can actually take it to the other extreme, and I'm seeing how great UX actually can be the main competitive advantage. See, this thing UX is a little bit contaminated as a concept, because to me, great UX is nothing but a great go-to-market strategy. It's part of a great go-to-market strategy. It's part of a great marketing strategy. Like if you were to write, the other day I gave a talk here at San Jose State University Business School, and I told them, if you're to write a business plan, to me, that business plan should include a UX strategy. You got the numbers and you got the financials and all that stuff. What about your UX? Because to me, UX is your brand. It's going to be how you go about the market. It's how you're going to build this building, right? So you have to have architects construction workers, designers, decorators. It's part of building this building. So if you're going to build a business, you have to add UX. Now, here's an example that comes to mind, and I'm sure there's like 100 others right now, but other than Amazon taking over the world, here's an example of a company that we internally, decided to use as an application. It's called Trip Actions. Okay, Trip Actions. Now, what do these guys do? These guys are a startup. They're not that big. But here's the thing. I don't know if you guys have heard of Concur, which is another large company that helps with travel management and among other things. The UI for Concur is okay, and we've been using it. But then here comes Trip Actions and says, with this awesome UI and this awesome UX, you're actually able to not only be more productive when you're doing travel planning and travel scheduling and arrangements and all that, but you're also saving money, because we also, in the UX, we include a way for you to see how much you're potentially saving if the employee in this case uses this hotel versus the other, because it's maybe $30 cheaper. And what they do is they've created this interesting mechanism whereby if you're saving the company money as an employee, booking your travel, you get money, you get paid, you get a reward. So the company saves and the employee saves, and that's all done through the Trip Actions app, which I've seen personally, and I can tell you it's just beautifully designed. I mean, it's just well put together, not only from a look and feel perspective, which is kind of like a something you take for granted these days. It's really well designed from an interaction design perspective, from a UX, it's got this great help, tips here and there. It guides you. It's a very guided experience. Yeah. Now, what has happened from a business perspective, not from a UX perspective, what has happened is that we have replaced Concur's tools with a Trip Action tool. Basically, Trip Actions is financially more competitive, is better and sells more, and is a better company. It's basically a more competitive player in the space because of their UX. And what we're seeing, and I think this is kind of like how I would wrap up this concept, and then I would move on to training. But what we're seeing, guys, for the first time, Susan, I don't think we knew this back then, but what we're seeing is that great UX equals great financial results. It's impacting the bottom line of businesses in such a way that in the last few years, what we're seeing is C-level organizations, the McKinseys, the Gartners, the management consulting, the Accentures, companies that were not necessarily worrying much about design or UX in the past are all over this now, guys. All over.
Yeah, I mean, some of them have essentially their own UX consultancies within the business management consultancies. So.
Correct. But I mean, like, Capital One acquiring Adaptive Path kind of story, right?
Yeah.
Design thinking, that IBM has posted out there. I just basically think that, from one extreme, which is what Guthrie was saying about how isn't this UX something we can actually kind of do easily, with some templates, we go to the other extreme where it's so complicated and so it is so difficult, and yet it's so important that actually UX probably has a more relevant space in the market than ever before. And it's probably why we are growing, why we're doing well, why there's so much demand out there, why Facebook has 200 UXers, Google 400. I mean, on and on and on, guys.
And I think it's so interesting because, for a long time, and maybe it was just happenstance, I've always connected that financial gain to the whole idea of usability and why you would want to do this. I mean, I remember when I first got involved in the field, I was doing it because it was interesting from a psychological point of view, because I was, I have a PhD in psychology. But very early on in my career, one of the first projects that I ever worked on was for an insurance company that had, and this was such one of these just kind of random stories. So I was teaching a class on usability, and it was a public class, and it was in a hotel. And I remember while teaching the class that somebody like popped their head into the meeting room, like they were in the back of the room. And I was like, you're teaching and you're all involved and you realize someone's standing in the back of the room and you kind of notice, wait a minute, why is there someone in the back of the room and who is that? But, you're not going to stop your teaching
right
to deal with it. And then by the time I, had time to do anything about it, he was gone. And then shortly after that, the company that I was teaching for got a phone call. It was apparently from this guy who was like a VP at a very large insurance company, who happened to be at another meeting at the hotel, and like he saw like the sign about, we probably had a sign up for the course that said something like, how to design more effective CRT screens or something, because this was a long time ago. And he saw the sign for what the meeting was and stuck his head in, because he had just had an experience as a VP at this insurance company where real estate appraisers, the insurance company owned a lot of commercial real estate, and one of the real estate appraisers filling out an online form, because the form was hard to fill out, had filled it out incorrectly. And the company had, and so it was for real commercial building real estate appraisal, and the appraisal had gone through and the interaction had gone through, and they had lost $7 million overnight from this one bad online form.
Wow.
And, this was of interest to this VP. And this was decades ago, where $7 million was worth even more than it is now. And even now, it sounds like a pretty large number. And so he became instantly very interested in what could he do to improve the usability of the company's online forms. And then we ended up doing a lot of consulting work and training all their, at that time, programmers, because nobody had UX people back then. And so, I've always, because of that, and that happened to me early in my UX, career, consulting career, that I've always tied in this idea that, when there are, and in fact, unfortunately, this is when it gets noticed, is when there's disasters, right? Then someone, decides to do something. But a lot of people obviously deciding to do it before disasters. But that when there is that tie-in of the bottom line to usability and UX work, and so to me that always made sense. To me, it always, I knew that I cared about it because I wanted people to have a great experience, but I also knew that it would get paid for because at the corporate level, people would understand how this, what the bottom line was in terms of profit.
Okay, but I want to push back. Oh, you go ahead.
So I just wanted to say quickly that here at UserZoom, Susan is known as the ROI lady.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I didn't forget, but we've done some webinars.
And I'm looking at a screen right now that we use for our pitches and for when I pitch to the analysts and to investors or whatever, where I have you and your picture on a recent study. I think you were involved in the Career Foundry, perhaps, study or something, but maybe another different one. But it talks about this global IT expenditures and the $150 billion loss due to abandoned projects. So I have you on the screen right now.
funny. Yeah, Guthrie, what were you gonna say?
Well, okay, so that's like all well and good and great and blah blah blah. But what we're finding in our work, and it's something that you had highlighted to check out, was that what's happening is, UX is so hot right now, and the company is looking at their, at how they're structuring their teams, and they're like, well, UX is everywhere. We need UX. We have this dev team that does all of the agile coding. Hey, you guys, you also here's like $20. Go do some usability stuff, and then we don't need to hire anyone, or we'll fire the UX team. They're so expensive and they take forever and they don't fit into our agile process. Let's just ignore them. And then so we're seeing more, my opinion, I'm seeing more people do UX than ever before, and at the same time there's less UX work being done on a per project basis than ever before. Like it's like, but before they were doing UX, or like they never heard of it, and now everyone's doing UX, but it's just like a sprinkle on top.
That's interesting.
Yes. I actually agree. I would say I agree, Susan and Guthrie. So the question is it good or bad, right? What does it really mean? If you think on one side, if you think about the fact that when we were doing testing, we were all yelling out loud, do more testing and do it earlier and do it more frequent. Don't just wait. Come on, it's going to cost you 10 times more to redo it. If you discover the problems early, you're going to save a lot of money. I remember teaching usability myself, and I remember basically saying this and commenting and writing about it, obviously, so that we could bring value to the businesses by selling our services. Well, now, guess what? Now we have thousands of studies going on. Shouldn't we be happy? Shouldn't we be celebrating? Well, yes and no. I would say that it's definitely good that we see a lot more testing going on, and certainly that it is embedded in the practice, in the development cycle and design cycle, because if you do it properly and you catch it early, then you move on and you make decisions. You make better design decisions. There's no question about that. However, if you post the question the wrong way, you get bad data, right? If you just rely on a simple video clip from 2 or 3 users, you may not have enough evidence. If you don't have somebody, really, with some sort of rigor, analyzing the results, you may come to the wrong conclusion. So where are we at today? I would say we're in a position, and this is kind of like the third topic that Susan brought up. I think we're in a position where we need to train. We really need to train and study and educate. I think that right now, all of us in this profession have this almost this duty to help out, to treat, to teach, to train, to do research, design research consulting, design research training. We do this. We have created in our own company and users, and we created a team that we call the customer enablement team. And what is customer enablement? It's about onboarding, training, suggesting, helping, strategizing a little bit, because sometimes research, if you can have a strategy instead of just kind of like putting band-aids to things with a little test here and there. But if you can make this part of a roadmap, part of a make user experience and user research part of your strategy and your roadmap, as part of your design sprints, etc. Then it doesn't feel like it's a band-aid. It feels like it's just part of the process. And what we're seeing, and I'll finish with this, and I'll hopefully you guys can comment on your thoughts. But what I'm seeing is that the most successful ones are the ones that have the most successful cases. I'm saying organizations have a high degree of UX maturity. We all know about the UX maturity model, but they typically have people in house. They have a budget. They have a clear mandate or clear let's just say order from up top that says you have to have certain UX KPIs. You have to test things You have to comply. You don't just ship crap. You have to be user-centric. And so you do have a cadence. You do the tests either remotely, moderated, unmoderated, whatever. But you definitely make decisions based on those. And they have testing kind of like an ongoing basis rather than this occasional situations where it's already too late or whatever. And they have they also have one last thing I'll mention. They have potentially a UX researcher that knows how to go about research, teaching and enabling the organization. We help those guys out quite a bit, but enabling those designers and developers that may not be ready. Well, they're teaching them, they're enabling them, they're checking out that they're doing the right thing here and there, rather than leave them alone. That's what I'm seeing right now in the market, guys.
Yeah, I mean, though, I mean, so because I don't know. Susan, with her long history, I mean, there are definitely camps of, oh, you should do UX this way for best results or that way for best results. And it's kind of interesting that, well, the companies that have their act together and make design a priority, regardless of like what process they're using, seem to have the best results. I find that fascinating as well.
Like the other thing to consider here is that we as UXers and researchers, we need to adapt also to what's happening. So agile and the fact that you can design something really, really quickly. I mean, we could fight it and say, no, wait a minute, slow it down. And I think that to some extent, I'm seeing that, because agile is kind of like a funny term, right? I keep hearing there's all these definitions of agile.
Yeah.
And I'm not really an agile expert myself, but I know enough to know, what's going on. And the fact is that sometimes, we kind of have to adapt to the agile, and agile also has to adapt and say, hey, wait a minute. The ultimate result here is not speed to market, and it's speed to market with quality, right? With the quality of the product design here, the UI, etc., and the flows. And so, if you can basically, embed research within the methodology and be able to do some rapid testing. One of the things that I'm seeing also, and that we're working on quite a bit, is automation on the both the design and the results side, the analytics side. To your point, Guthrie, on you may not know how to write a study, but the fact is we can give them templates, we can give them a lot of guidance on, like a guided experience on what it is that you should be asking. And why, and then in the reports, what I'm seeing is also the fact that there's no real time for creating a PowerPoint report and kind of discussing the results, on a table of 10 people and then going back and deciding what to do. The reporting is about these nuggets, these specific pieces, like Tomer Sharon called them, what do you call atomic nuggets of information. I don't remember, but he wrote an article, a really interesting article that I referenced quite a bit. That video clip that showed something, and then you can say, hey, well, it's only one video clip. How many? Well, we actually ran another study and showed that actually 60 out of 100 or there's 80 out of 100 people have that issue. And so you may inform at some point in the design process with very simple, basic nuggets of information, conclusions that you come to. And then you're like, well, let's test this hypothesis again next week or in 2 weeks, and maybe we run it with a larger sample. We're doing this ourselves. We use user Zoom every week. We got a long way to go, by the way, because our interface can definitely improve. I think, like anybody, and I'm not gonna hide that. And so we use it internally, and I find these guys sometimes, the research team coming to me, and within the product team and design team coming to me with some really brilliant ideas based out of research that kind of guide the design process. So, ultimately we're in this stage, and I guess I would summarize it in this stage where I think we're seeing a lot of positive things, a lot more testing than ever before, a lot more opinion, a lot more design is done based on user feedback than the wild guesses of the past. It's actually impacting the results and the quality of the products out there so that they can be financially, better off and more competitive. But at the same time, there is a little bit of this danger in the democratization of research, where if you don't do it right, you can also kill you, or not maybe kill you, but really harm you, I guess, in the design process. So I think training and education is a big one from here to probably the next few years. As we move forward.
All right. So now I have a question about the future.
Okay. Here's my crystal ball. Here's my crystal ball right here.
Yes, you got it. You took it out. All right. I guess I have two questions about the future. One being perhaps a little more practical than the other. I'm not sure. So one question would be, what do you see, if you can share, and you may not be able to share, but what can you see as being, future ideas you would like to build into your products, about, how people will be doing testing, how people will be gathering user research data in the future. And then the other question, I'll ask them both at the same time, and you can decide what to answer, is, and Guthrie, I know, is just going to be, he's going to roll his eyes. I know he is.
My eyes are already
rolling.
I'm not going to roll my eye. Well, I guess it depends what you say. You are,
because I'm going to ask about, what do you think of, and are you guys thinking, or are you thinking about the role that, AI, machine learning,
by the
automation.
Way, I just saw a great picture, where AI was trying to identify different types of dogs.
Yes.
And it kept identifying muffins as dogs. Like blueberry muffins with like the two eyes looks a lot like a chihuahua. Blueberry
muffins are a lot like a chihuahua.
It's a really amazing picture.
Anyway, so if you guys are planning or thinking about using AI in terms of either doing user research or analyzing user research or making recommendations from user research.
You're in California, right?
I am, yeah.
Of course they're thinking about AI.
No,
it's California. You can't walk down the street without the ice cream truck using AI to.
But you know what? That's exactly how I was going to answer. It's not so much about California. The thing is, I attended this conference last week, SaaStr conference. And yeah, to your point, Guthrie, I mean, it's just all over the place. People are talking about it like they're talking about coffee. But here's the thing. I don't believe so much in this AI thing. I mean, maybe I'm mistaken, or maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. The way I look at it, guys, isn't technology in general artificial intelligence? Like, I think the only reason why they're talking so much about AI is because we're kind of like saying, no, more human stuff is going to be done by a machine, like more human stuff. But isn't that already what's happening? Isn't software doing and automating things that we used to do? I mean, like, didn't we used to just fill out the survey through a paper or maybe through a phone, survey, and now we do it through SurveyMonkey? I don't really understand. I guess that this, there's a Hollywood aspect to this, right? There's this romantic aspect of, AI, artificial intelligence, meaning that a human is going to have, like, we're going to have a robot, like Spielberg movie, right? Or the movie Her. I'm honestly, I mean, other than Tesla self-driving cars, which is, by the way, something I'm really, really scared of, being a racing fan, motorsport fan myself. Other than that, I don't know. I just cannot see this artificial intelligence concept that clearly yet. I just think that software is eating the world, and so everything is being taken care of by software, and it's getting more sophisticated. But I don't like AI, and so that kind of leads me to the question. I don't like the concept of AI so much. I guess I'm just not taking it yet, basically. So that leads me to the question you were or to the point about the future that Susan, you brought up. What I do see is automation, right? Which is kind of like the same thing, but I like the concept of automation. Basically, what I'm seeing, and I'm already seeing it today because we are building some stuff that may be extremely sophisticated, and some advanced users are adopting it, but some others, are clearly not there yet, and they're using the very basic features that we launched 5 years ago. But what I'm seeing is that, for instance, one of the major pain in the UX research, user research, the testing world that we're speaking about, is connecting with users, connecting with those participants. I can tell you that every time we talk to somebody, they are like, "Oh, do you find them for us? It's so important to get the right participants." And I want to go back to those participants over and over again because I want to make this more longitudinal, and I'm testing every week. So, how do we find those guys that are able to kind of participate on a constant basis and kind of be part of our design process? And so what I'm seeing, and this is just one of the things. There's plenty more, but there's the automation of how you involve your end user and your customer into the design process and into your company. Like, how involved are they? How close they are to your company, and how you're going to find them. So I can envision communities and so-called the private panels. This is already happening out there, but I'm just thinking that it's going to become mainstream, where you have a way to access your panels on a constant basis and test usability in hours, and basically do this across every single thing you do all the time, in every single product, in every single web property, at every level of the organization, in all companies, whether it's small or big. I can just, that's the thing. It's going to become so automated that you just kind of almost push a button, and you're already collecting feedback, right? So it's not this like major event that you're doing these tests. It's kind of world where we come from. It's really embedded in the process, and it's so automated that it's almost like not even called a test. It's just part of design. To me, research is design. It's always been, and that's one thing. The other thing is in the analytics. The other trend I see is, because the other hardest part, the first one was finding participants. The second one is actually automating basically the consumption of data. How to make the right decisions based on the large amount of data you collect when you're doing user experience research. So you may collect videos, for instance, or you may collect open-ended questions through surveys, or you have analytics, traffic analysis, you have ratings, voice of customer feedback on the website. There's a ton of data out there related to the quality of the user experience or customer experience. And so how do we make that consumption of data more automated, more easy to understand? For instance, we see how there's waste, and we've done this, but I don't want to make this a user thing. But what you can do out there is you can filter, you can basically not have a full video, but just have specific moments where the machine, the software, is able to see whether there's a problem or not, whether the customer was happy or not, whether there's a negative comment or not, whether there's a problem. Imagine not having to go through those videos, right, over 1 hour, and automating the way that you consume that data. Imagine emotional recognition, where you can see if somebody's unhappy. What if the system was able to recognize that you're pissed because you wrote something, and automatically right there, boom, there's some sort of chat person or something that suggests, hey, let me help you out. Like right there on your mobile phone. To me, that's where companies like Amazon, Google, Apple, all those guys are probably going in that direction, where things just get so automated that you just resolve the problems right away, and that turns into a fantastic UX, right? So both how you connect to participants and your user base, and how you analyze the data, all of it much more automated thanks to software. I think those are big trends.
I don't know. That sounds like AI to me.
So I think AI. I mean, the thing is, people use the term AI in a poor way, But it really, AI just means smarter software.
Smart automation.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
But I think what you're saying is so interesting, because I think those two, you can almost think of those as bookends to the user research, right? This idea of, well, we wanted user research, but we got it, how are we getting people to do user research on? And that does continue to be a huge issue for some people, and sometimes a stopping point, because it's like, I don't know, how do we go get people? And then the other, so you need the people, you need to go out and get them in order to do your study. Then you do your study, and then as you're saying, on the other end you have, okay, we've got some data, what do we do with it? And I do think that those are probably wonderful opportunities for you guys moving forward to make those bookend pieces as easy and seamless as the middle user research piece is.
Yeah, where I think, and just to wrap, I guess to comment on that, where I think AI will not get to, at least in the foreseeable future, is, all right, so based on all this data, based on all these results, what should we do and what should we redesign? What should we do about it? What, like the creative side of things?
Yeah, and I'm not sure I agree with you. I think we might get there faster than you think. Whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, I don't know. But we'll see. We'll come back in 3 years. We'll do this conversation again, and we'll see.
Oh my gosh, that would be fun.
Which way it went. Hey, if people want to reach you, Guthrie, did you have something else you wanted to throw in before?
Yeah, but you can do that first.
Okay, so if people want to reach you, Alfonso, or reach UserZoom, what is the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, there's a website, obviously, www.userzoom.com, and you got a lot of information there. There's also a contact form, where it's easy to reach us. My email is alfonso@userzoom.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn and at Twitter at Nuez23. I think that's the best way.
Okay.
And then,
Guthrie.
So basketball. What's your team?
I'll be very, very, very honest here. I grew up a Lakers fan. Sure. When I was in Madrid, and you remember when I told you that my mom, my dad, my parents said, we're gonna kick you out for a year, and you're gonna go and mature to the U.S. I told them two things. One is I'm scared, and the second was, but if I'm gonna do it, please send me to California, next to somewhere close to the LA Lakers, so I can watch Magic Johnson play. And what happened and by the way, on my LinkedIn profile, you can read this story, because I decided to just write a funny story rather than the boring stuff that everybody writes. Basically what happened was that I got sent. So I'm from Madrid, Spain. It's 5 million people, a big mecca, a big city. I grew up in the 6th floor of a tall building, 1,100 square feet. And that's just basically how most people live. When they sent me to the U.S., they sent me to this, again, I wanted to be somewhere in the L.A. and go watch the Lakers play. And they sent me to this small town called Ramona in North County, in the middle of nowhere, in the mountains in San Diego. When I got there, I could smell the manure. It was just farming, horses and cows all over the place. I had never seen a cow before. And yet they had a huge, super duper basketball program. The coach was from Michigan. He ended up taking me to meet Magic Johnson in person.
Oh my God!
For my birthday.
How cool is that?
And I have a picture with him. And I ended up getting a scholarship. So hey, you may end up in this little small farming town, but dreams do happen. Now, I grew up a Lakers fan, but I gotta say that living in the Bay Area and seeing what's happening in the last few years, I gotta say, I'm a big fan of the Warriors as well. So there you have it.
That's a very California bandwagon answer. I like it a lot. All right. Well, I've been watching a little Real Madrid for Doncic, because the Bulls might get that number 1 pick. I'm not sure I'm entirely sold yet, but we'll see.
Yep, the Bulls need some help. So yes.
So there you go, Susan. You're learning a little bit about
No, I
basketball
tuned
lore.
out for that whole part.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much, Alfonso, for coming on and talking with us. And
thank you.
Guthrie, if people want to reach us.
Yeah, if you have any questions for us or anyone, you can email us at info@theteamw.com. I don't know if there's anything else we want to plug. Anything else you want to plug?
No, I just want to say that I really, really appreciate it. I was so excited when I heard you guys, kind of invited me over to do the podcast. So just want to really thank you. And definitely invite you to talk again, maybe in 2 to 3 years, maybe not 3, because 2 years is a long time. So we can kind of catch up and see how things go. But thank you so much.
All right, it's great having you on. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.